All right, guys, good morning. Let's see, we're starting off the week here. This is Saturday morning, and we're going to recap Thursday and Friday. Now, there wasn't a whole lot of action on Thursday as far as races to go over, trips or horses, things like that. So it'll be pretty quick. I'll touch on one race just to kind of make sure that there's some content for the day, and that's race 5. I kind of tweeted this out. I know a lot of you guys that are following this channel follow me on Twitter as well. So race 5, there was a very short price favorite at post time, and on the class drop, made sense, ran a decent race, and I'm talking about the number 1 Dub Nation back on January 25th. So that was on opening weekend in the mud. 5th place finish, but again, was facing tougher than he was on Thursday. The problem with this horse was that he was going to go 2 turns this afternoon and had never raced at a route. And, sometimes there's these horses that are kind of like crying out for more ground, but he's making start number 11. So you think at some point along the way, and they've tried turf, they've tried different classes, and by this is trainer D'Amato, so he's very smart. He's going to put horses where they can win, and just the fact that there's been no intention to run this horse long, and now all of a sudden, he's dropping class and he's running long. So, he could win, definitely, but the type of horse at a short price that is just worth taking on. So, I'm not going to kind of get into this race a whole lot, but those are just things from as a handicapper when you're looking at a race and you see on the board, oh, this horse is like really short. Maybe this is a race, take a shot in, kind of work your way out. The winner of the race, let me pull up this chart here. The winner of the race was a number 6 war veteran. He wasn't that exciting going into the race, but certainly figured as kind of like a second choice type, which is what he was, 3-1, but kind of got a perfect trip. Coworker running a decent race to finish second, was kind of part of that early pace with Dub Nation held on for second. But overall, kind of outside of the favorite, there was a delay to the race. And I've talked about this in the past as far as delays, how they can kind of take horses out of their game. And that's just something to keep in mind. A horse got very fractious in the gate, kind of ran off. They had to unload the horses, put them back in the gate. So that being a delay race, we'll kind of see where the horses shake out going forward. Now, let's get into yesterday's card. So this is on February 28th. I'm going to start putting the dates in the title because I know some people want to reference, and I think it's hard when it's like day 3. You have to kind of think like, is that the 26th, the 27th? So I'm going to start adding that. I think that'll be easier as far as wanting to reference these horses, because we're starting to see a lot of these horses run back and a lot of trips. And that kind of being the case yesterday on the 28th. I wrote up my notes. I kind of did this backwards, so I might skip around a little bit. But the first couple races I handicapped on Brisnet didn't quite have the results that I kind of wrote up, but general aspect in those races was to take on the favorite in both cases, and that seemed to be the case. So some good payouts in the early sequence. But let's look at race 3. Now, race 3 had a horse as the favorite. This is the number 6, Lovely Lou. She ran back on February 7th and almost pulled the upset that day. And I talked about her on the video because she was extremely fractious pre-race. And I thought, they're probably fractious pre-race, dropped the rider, ran off. They're probably going to scratch this horse, right? There's no way she could possibly run. Well, she ran anyways and ran a huge race. I mean, just missed. Did everything that a horse should do in order to win a race and just kind of got unlucky coming from off the pace. But talking about her trip in the video, we had all those factors going in, and the race essentially being kind of a taxing effort. So given that hard keyword on optics, and that I think was probably a little bit of the case yesterday. Again, she ran a good race to finish second. Still the B optics grade with the wide trip. But in terms of optics figures, and again, we kind of go through a verification. So this is kind of the early optics figures. She ran an 82 back on February 27th and then came back yesterday. So that's 3 weeks to the date, and ran a 74. So a little bit of, you can kind of see, especially with the wide trip, perhaps that big race first out, kind of taxed her a little bit, but still overall, pretty good race. Let me see, go through some of these other horses and go through the race if there's anything that's kind of worth touching on. I think everything else is pretty straightforward, that being kind of the one horse that was worth a mention. Again, like I said, I wrote this up backwards, so it's kind of weird. So let's skip ahead to race 6. All right. Now in race 6, there was this isn't really that technical, but I think it's probably worth talking about because there was a disqualification. And I mean, the call could have gone either way. I mean, both these horses, talking about the number 3 Wild Poppet, the number 9 Giant Gallant Plunger, both these horses finishing right on the wire, both running a good race. The number 3 actually hit the wire first, pushed the pace sitter, stayed on better of the pair, but kind of hurted the number 9. There's some contact, and the two were together, just qualified for the contact. Like I said, I could have seen it either way. I don't really fault that. I think it was, in my opinion, I think the 3 probably initiated it, a little bit of race riding, a little bit of getting tired late. But, kind of all the same, just want to talk about that because I know there was some controversy on there. And again, I can't really go one way or another, but I don't really fault this call, so to speak. All right, race 7. And this is going to be kind of race 7, I believe race 8. We'll kind of talk about, because there's similar aspects. With the winner being number 6, Strolling. Now, this was his second start of the meet. He ran back off a layoff January 26th, so that opening part of the weekend in the mud, and talked about this horse on the video on the recap video with some excuse. And that excuse coming in the gate where he became very restless, pushed through the stall, even though he didn't run off, still being fractious in the gate, pushing the stall door, even though he didn't run off, broke slow. The rider moved early, wide, took some contact in the lane, and kind of overall that being just sort of an excuse, just not an ideal trip. Well, he came back yesterday in a softer spot. So he ran an optional allowance, an N2X on January 26th, came back yesterday in a claiming race, a conditional claiming race, horse that hadn't won in a year. So really good spot for him. I mean, in terms of, we use the optics figure range. I utilize this a lot in my handicapping because it gives me just a 93 to 91. So on the low side, 93, on the high side, 101. Compare that to yesterday's optics figure range, which was a 79 to 87. So that's a massive drop in class. He ran a 72, having that trouble in the mud, coming off a 213-day layoff, a good closing kick to win yesterday. A little bit of flow aided the pace in there. Let me see if we have that rated, if it's up yet. Was average early, very fast late. So kind of a strong overall race shape yesterday. Was able to close into that pace, running down the pace setter, running in 95. So, kind of a big, and again, these are going to get verified. The early figure being a 95, good effort from him there. But again, that's kind of one of those where I wish I had the regular chart pulled up to see what it was. I wonder if I do actually. No, I don't, unfortunately. Maybe I'll touch on that, maybe on Twitter or something. But to kind of see what the chart came up with, the official chart for having that information as far as the gate, because it just made such a difference in his trip and just kind of overall behavior to project that improvement. The second place finisher, also good race, Nuclear Option, the number 4. He was part of that early pace. Again, kind of a pretty fast pace, and then just getting run down by Strolling. So good effort there. Kind of overall, again, I talk about that optics figure range being the 79 to 87. And a lot of these figures, outside of our best friend DL, who finished 8th of the 8, even the 7th place finisher, Control Stake, with a wide trip. I should talk about that as well. With the wide trip, finished 79. So even his optics figure being on kind of the low side of that par. So kind of overall that being sort of a strong race for the level. Just something to think about going forward. I should have touched on this earlier, but as far as the track profile yesterday, I'm not going to necessarily say there was a bias, but I think it did kind of favor horses that were towards the inside, kind of saving ground a little bit. Not by any means horses that were wide or closing wide couldn't win. A few of them did and ran well. But I think there was a little bit of a preference. So again, I don't want to note it as a bias or get like overly crazy. Sometimes people do that. There was a big, favoring this or that. Not the case, but subtle upgrades and downgrades going forward are things to keep in mind. Now, race number 8, I think this will be the last race you talk about. they'll go over the ninth because, again, I think that was another race that was kind of strong for the level. But yesterday, I want to talk about this because we kind of had a similar situation with one of the horses as far as being excused at the gate. And that being number 7, Calf Moon Bay. She was given an excuse where she was probably should have been scratched, very fractious, backed out, quickly put back in. Probably shouldn't have run back on February 8th. She ran yesterday. No real excuse for her there. I mean, we obviously could have made the excuse for the February 8th race, but she was wide. Not an ideal trip for her overall, but still, I mean, just kind of packed it in at the half mile, and that was that. Then I'm going to pull up the grid right now, and we can kind of see how many horses, just sort of do a recap on that race because it's just been so productive. Overall, we've had Special Relativity came back a week later. She was the first winner out of that race. She came back a week later and won. Corinne, she finished 3rd in grade 3, improving her speed figures. Blue Moonrise won yesterday. Sarah C, she won out of that race. She finished 8th in the Pippin and then went on to win an allowance race less than 2 weeks later. Well, Nelly, she was the winner of that race. She finished 2nd, but a really solid 2nd in the grade 3 Bayakoa. So that race just kind of overall has been quite productive. She was able to win yesterday on the front end, got the lone trip, was able to kind of get away with relatively moderate pace early and then cleared late. And you can watch the visuals and you see her tail flashing at the end. That's nothing new for her. She's done that since before she made her very first start. I followed her in Southern California, watched her workouts, her races. That's who she is, and it's what she does. But outside of that, I thought let's see, finished 2nd. The number 1, Get Rid of What Ails You. Kind of a good move, a late move behind the open length winner, and same thing with Royal Gem. Both those horses were able to save ground. Even the number 10, she kind of dropped back early and closed up the inside. So again, kind of with that inside favoring profile, something to keep in mind. But then also, where I say this isn't quite a bias, is there's horses like the number 4, Blessed Again, who ended up finishing 5th. She was inside behind those pace setters and lost ground. So on kind of a true bias, she probably would have been carried a little bit more by that track profile. Again, things to talk about. So the 9th race, again, there's nothing really like from a trip perspective in this race, but the race came up quite strong. So again, the optics figure range on the low side an 89, high side 95 for horses that typically win that race. The winner, number 12, Sunny Smack, massive effort, inside out trip, big sustained move, and then kind of kept that momentum to run down the pace setters and kind of hold late, finishing in hand by open lengths. He earned a 105 B+ optics grade. The number 5, Pickford, I thought it was good effort from him. I know there's kind of that blanket for place. He kind of out finishing those pace setters, finishing 3rd and 4th, the number 7, Mogancha, and number 8, Incorrigible. But that he was wide and then just kind of stayed on. So I thought it was kind of a sneaky good effort there. And again, his optics figures preliminary being pretty strong. And kind of, those are kind of the main horses to keep an eye on. But sort of overall, when you see this kind of, if this race turns out to be productive, we can kind of reference it going forward. All right, I think that's it today. Able to get through that as kind of quickly as possible to cover the last couple days. We have Saturday, we've got racing today and Sunday, so we'll be back with recap videos for those days. Good luck to everybody again. Check out Brisnet for the race of the day at Oaklawn, and then over at Optics EQ. Kind of more Oaklawn stuff, Santa Anita. Chris is handicapping some races from all over. John wrote up the Fountain of Youth, so a lot of good information. That's all free. I love that. Just make sure you register, log in, all that good stuff. All right, everybody, good luck this weekend.